Hey, Improvement Nerds, this is Tom. Got another quick video for you today. I've had a lot of individuals lately talking about design thinking, either on the podcast or on a handful of projects that I'm supporting. So I thought it'd be helpful to showcase the design thinking process and bring forward a common approach that people are using to apply the design thinking principles to solve problems within their organization. So, most organizations that are doing continuous improvement, they're probably very likely with the Kaizen Blitz method, which is applying DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control to solve a problem within the organization over the timeline of a week. So, in regards to the Kaizen, there's reasons to put people in a room and get it done quickly. And then, of course, there's oftentimes on the other side of that, reasons to approach the project in a more week to week or periodic basis instead of sprinting it out. So I'm not saying that the Kaizen or the design sprint is something that's going to fit for everyone. For me, I've really enjoyed it. It does get quick results, but it does take a lot of energy and a lot of resources to get done in that short timeline. So over that timeline of a week, you're taking a design team. Typically, your design team is about 8 to 10 people, sometimes up to 12. But the more that you add, the more complex it gets to keep everyone engaged and to get their input and involvement across the sprint. So, because you're trying to move quickly, a smaller, more agile, adaptive team is ideal versus a larger team, which in some cases can slow you down. So, working with your sponsor to identify the right people, get them in a room, and target their energy on that problem through design thinking principles. So on day one, most times starting on Monday, you're going to want to orient your design team to the process that they're going to be following, especially if they've done other improvement activities. The design thinking process is very different. So you'll want to give them some training and some orientation to the design thinking process. So after you've given them their training wheels, you'll then want to turn their attention to really what's the problem we're trying to solve and present to them the challenge statement. And then based on that challenge statement, the team is quickly going to go from how the business has defined the problem to trying to understand the problem through the customer's perspective. So that is done through deep dive interviews. So what you typically do is you partner up individuals. So you have a lead interviewer and a scribe, and you have them go out and interact with customers of the organization and also of competitors if that's accessible, like industry or even industries that aren't alike but possibly can glean useful insights. So you form your design team and you prepare them to go out and conduct these deep dive interviews. And really, what they're trying to do in these conversations is to engage the customer in storytelling and trying to understand what that customer's experiences have been. So these interviews typically take about 20 to 30 minutes. I've seen a lot of success in randomly sampling individuals by going out and just doing walkarounds. I know in certain circumstances, things may have to be scheduled. So that's something that you may want to consider before you actually bring the group together in this design sprint, is to maybe have a couple of individuals already identified and have interview time scheduled for those individuals. So that's the last part of the day. Team goes out and does their deep dive interviews, and sometimes there's a little bit of room left in the day to bring them back early and just kind of hear what they heard and kind of feed off that energy. But most times that can't happen until the next day, just because maybe the group has to drive large distances to reach customers. I've been in a client that served many different cities, and they were sending design teams on 30-40 minute drives to go interact with different parts of the organization. So sometimes the team may not be able to come back together and unpack the interviews until the next day. So on day two, what you're really trying to do is learn from the stories that were told and to revisit them and analyze them, not just with your brain or logic, but really with your heart and through the lens of empathy. And a tool that is very helpful in doing that is the empathy map. So has the design team, the people who interviewed the customer, are retelling the story. The other designers on the team are helping to unpack it using post-it notes, and they're capturing what was said. So certain quotes or things that were detailed in the story, do what was done, so the actions that the person was taking or things they were trying to accomplish during the story. So if you look at this little image here, you see the say and the do is kind of on the left hand side of this chart, and those are pretty concrete. They're things that are oftentimes detailed in the story and aren't causing the team to have to stretch themselves to do any inference. Moving to the right side of this, that center line is called the line of inference most times. And what they're trying to assess is what was that customer thinking and what was that customer feeling. So they're trying to get to what's their mental models, what's their behaviors, what's their motivations, but what is their emotions that they're experiencing as they're retelling the story and the experiences that they've had. So from this map, then you're going to gain some really important insights. Oftentimes there are contradictions that occur within the story that you'll want to make sure the team really tunes into. But mostly what you're trying to get to is what is the motivating factors for this person? What motivates them to do the things they do? And then from here, per map, per empathy map, I do want to talk about that a little bit, but per empathy map, you're going to come up with a user need statement, which is, who's the user? It's an alias. It's something used to describe who that user is, what's their needs, and why do they have those needs? So it's user needs because. So back to those maps, the empathy maps. So as you go out and you do interviews, oftentimes the design team's talking to between 20 and 30 customers, and as they engage in that storytelling, they're gonna start to sense overlap in the stories that are being told or the experiences that are being had. And as they bring that back, what you'll tend to see is a consolidation of those stories and combining of those stories. So in most cases, you'll see 20 to 30 interviews convert into about 6 to 7, maybe 8 empathy maps. And then those empathy maps become an input into your personas, and that's really what you focus on day 3. So at the start of day 3, because so much happened on the previous day, you want to recap and you want to revisit your user needs statements and make sure that they accurately reflect the users and what their needs are and the reasons those needs exist. And then based on those user needs statements, you're going to kind of expand on those and create a persona. The persona is a semi-fictional character that represents the stories you heard or the like stories, the similar stories that were told, that can be combined together to create a unique individual that really informs decision making for the organization. So the persona, as I said, is a semi-fictional character. Most times what you'll see is based on the demographics of the people who shared the stories. You'll see them kind of pick an age range of the persona, a gender, a race, so on and so forth. So you'll often see that take shape based on the stories you heard. The storyline is the key part of it. It's, who is this person? What was their experiences? What are their beliefs? And that is oftentimes a mismatch of the empathy maps being combined and consolidated to kind of roll up into this unique individual that's important to the organization to start to understand. So the personas later become an input into your brainstorming and your prototyping. But there's a step in between creating your personas and creating solutions for them. And that is really getting to know who your personas are and trying to answer the questions of how might we do certain things on that individual's behalf. So after you created your personas, the next thing you do is generate a list of how might we statements that are like mini challenge statements that are appropriate to that specific persona. So if you have a persona who is challenged with time management and they always feel like they're running a little bit behind, maybe one of those how might we statements could be, how might we help this individual to not feel so rushed or always behind schedule? Or how might we create reminders so that this person isn't always feeling like they're late? So the how might we statements are really centered around who that specific persona is and what are some of the things we might be able to do for them to improve their experience or better meet their needs. Those how might we statements then roll over into the next day. We're at Thursday now, and based on those how might we statements, those small challenge statements, we start to brainstorm ideas for improvement that would satisfy our persona's needs. And as we do brainstorming, a really important thing to do is to focus on quantity and less on quality. So the more ideas that are being generated, the better. And the more creative that the ideas are, the better. I think I'd interacted with someone recently who was talking about innovation, and that if the idea doesn't make you smirk a little bit because of how crazy it is, it's probably not far enough out there. So when you're doing brainstorming, make sure you have a good balance of things that are tangible, that are realistic, and things that are far-fetched and so far out there that they're worth striving for. So do your brainstorming. Then from your brainstorming, you're going to go through some refinement and selection and prioritization of those ideas. Again, what you're trying to do is crosswalk the solutions you've come up with your persona's needs and use that as a filter to prioritize those ideas that you move forward into the next steps of sketching and prototyping. So as you take these ideas for improvement and you start to expand and hang details on them, what you'll start with is very caveman-like sketches that are low-tech, rude and crude. And what you're doing is you're drawing out experiences or products or services, things that you think help convey the idea. And then you're sharing that with your design team or maybe even with the customer, and you're getting feedback from them and you're revising it. And you repeat this process multiple times on paper before you actually try to take that idea from paper and into reality, which is what you would do in prototyping and role playing. So during prototyping and role playing, think of it as, rapid prototyping. If you've got pipe cleaners or widgets and things in the environment that allow you to kind of quickly create a mock-up of what the product might look like. Or if you're mocking up a service, you could do a demonstration or a commercial through role playing. But what you're trying to do is bring the idea to life and make it something that exists in reality. No longer is it just an idea on paper, but it's something that is present that people can interact with. Based on that, then those prototypes and that scenarios or those role play activities that you've created, then you move to your final day, which is to test those ideas and to run your prototype in front of your customers, run the scenario or role play in front of your customers. And what you're doing here is testing to get feedback and to learn and to incorporate that learning into your prototypes or into your services or that role-playing scenario. And based on that learning, then hopefully that allows you to create a really robust recommendation that you can bring forward to the organization and help them understand what you had learned through the design process and what are the most appropriate next steps based on the learning that occurred across this design sprint. So I know I threw a lot at you, and I hope that this visual is a resource that can be helpful to you and your organization as you lead teams through this process. I would be forever grateful if you can leave a comment and give me some feedback on what you think about this video, this schematic. And also, if I can encourage you to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button to be notified when I upload videos in the future, I'd be grateful for that as well. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.